CM Punk and AEW are being sued. Was there backstage chaos for The Rock's return on SmackDown a shock? New WWE star and more. I'm Luke Owen and this is the WrestleTalk News.
Support WrestleTalk!
We've got a big old chunky lawsuit story to get into shortly, so let's clear our palates with some Monday morning niceness. Over the weekend, Diamond Dallas Page released his latest video charting the rehabilitation of Lex Luger, who had severe spinal issues since the late 2000s. Throughout the 2010s, he was slowly using his wheelchair more and more to get around, and by 2021 was completely reliant on it. But as DDP has done with other legends from our childhoods, he's been working with Luger to help him with his mobility, and the most recent video titled Third Time's the Charm shows that Luger's hard work has meant he's now able to lift himself out of his chair and stand up on his own. An incredible journey and one that deserves all the praise in the world. So drop your congratulations to Luger in the comments. Let's spread some positivity into this world, because sometimes there isn't a lot of it in the world of wrestling. Fightful broke the news yesterday that Ryan Nemeth, a former AEW wrestler, has filed a lawsuit against All Elite Wrestling and Phil Brooks, aka CM Punk. The lawsuit alleges assault, breach of contract, breach of implied covenant of good faith, and fair dealing and intentional interference with prospective advantage. That last bit may sound like word salad, but it basically sums up that Nemeth feels that his career has been impacted by the actions of AEW and CM Punk. To get the full story of this, we're going to have to take a step backwards and remind ourselves how we got here. Following the 2022 All Out pay-per-view, CM Punk cut a scathing promo during the post-show press conference on AEW, the management of the company, and the Elite, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and the Young Bucks. This not only saw an increase in sales for a local muffin company, but also led to Punk fighting with Omega and the Bucks backstage, and all men were stripped of the titles they'd won earlier in the night and were suspended. They all returned, but there was clearly uneasy tensions, and in the end, Punk became a major pawn in AEW securing a second TV show with Warner Bros. Discovery, Collision, which became Punk's show. AEW effectively had a roster split. During all of this, Ryan Nemeth put out a tweet that referred to CM Punk as literally the softest man alive, and this led to an incident at a Dynamite taping in Chicago where Punk confronted Nemeth about the tweet. Reports from the time said that Nemeth claimed he did it in character to get heat, but Punk believed he did it to score points with his friends, aka the Young Bucks. Fightful Select's report from August 2023 says Punk asked him to knock it off because tensions were high and they were trying to move on, which is quite ironic given the news story we're covering today. Fightful added at the time Punk said he didn't want Nemeth being passive-aggressive unless they were handling it another way. People close to Punk claim that Nemeth apologized and that the two shook hands. In 2023, Punk got into another backstage altercation with Jack Perry at AEW's first All-In show in Wembley Stadium and was fired, leading to hell freezing over and Punk returned to WWE, the company he trashed for around a decade, including on All Elite Wrestling television. Last December, Fightful Select reported that Nemeth had submitted a complaint to All Elite Wrestling following his exit from the company, which gave a detailed timeline of events and an alternative version of the Chicago Dynamite incident. Fightful Select wrote at the time, Nemeth says that on June 21st, 2023, Brooks did threaten him in an AEW locker room. According to Nemeth, this incident led him to not being booked by All Elite Wrestling. And when he eventually was booked for a Collision show in August, he was informed by Pat Buck when he arrived at the building that Punk had demanded he be removed from the venue. And on February 14th, Valentine's Day, bummer, Nemeth filed a lawsuit in the Los Angeles Superior Court against AEW and CM Punk, which has since been obtained by Fightful. The lawsuit alleges Brooks undertook a campaign to terrorize and intimidate plaintiff, that's Ryan Nemeth, including physical assault. AEW and Tony Khan did nothing to protect Ryan Nemeth and other wrestling performers from despicable conduct on the part of Brooks. AEW turned a blind eye to Brooks' conduct because of Tony's deep admiration for Brooks and because he was their most popular wrestling in-ring performer. At Brooks and Tony's insistence, AEW and Tony Khan have undertaken an effort to blackball Nemeth so we can never again work in the wrestling business. The lawsuit says of the Chicago Dynamite incident on June 21, 2023, following Brooks' return to the wrestling circuit, he assaulted Nemeth in the male talent locker room. In a menacing manner, Brooks shouted at Nemeth, "Do we have an effing problem? Do we need to step outside and handle this like men?" Nemeth was cornered by Brooks and did everything he could in order to de-escalate the situation. The next day, Nemeth was contacted by Tony Schiavone and other executives from AEW to explain what happened. Nemeth calmly and factually explained that he was attacked by Brooks in the locker room. Following the assault, nothing happened to Brooks as far as punishment from AEW. Nemeth alleges that on the morning of that Collision taping that he'd been booked for, he saw CM Punk in the hotel lobby, who then got out his phone to text someone. Nemeth then claims he received a text shortly after that moment from Pat Buck, which led to him being sent home. The suit reads Nemeth was embarrassed and humiliated in front of other wrestlers who witnessed him being kicked out of the arena. More importantly, fans observed him leaving the arena. Pictures were taken and the expulsion became viral on social media. This humiliation caused irreparable damage to the marketability and reputation of Nemeth. Throughout the suit, Nemeth's team talks about how much Tony Khan liked CM Punk, at one point alleges it was bordering on obsession, and even says of Punk returning to WWE, Khan was heartbroken by the departure of Brooks, his idol that he adored in every way. The suit claims Khan believes that Brooks left AEW because of Nemeth. Fightful add Nemeth is seeking compensatory damages, punitive damages, and demands of a jury trial. However, as of the time of this recording, there is no case number assigned to the lawsuit and it is not yet listed online. And I'll be honest with you, I cannot find a good way to segue out of that story into this plug, so CM Punk and Ryan Nemeth's brother Dolph Ziggler were both featured on WrestleMania 28. And speaking of WrestleMania 28, Ollie Davis and I did a massive 3.5-hour review of that show as part of our deep dive into The Rock's first return to WWE and his feud with John Cena, which is now available to watch for free. And if you want the next chapter, head on over to patreon.com/WrestleTalk to watch our 3.5-hour review of Raw 1000, which is the show where Punk turned heel on The Rock. And speaking of The Rock, maybe this was the place to put the plug in. On Thursday, it was revealed that Rock would be returning to SmackDown to make a big announcement, which ended up being the news that next year's WrestleMania will take place in New Orleans. But he also had some other business on the show, namely addressing Cody Rhodes to ask him to be his corporate champion. And clearly, having rewatched Paul W.S. Anderson's 1995 masterpiece adaptation of Mortal Kombat, Rock said that he didn't want Cody's title, he wanted to Shang Tsung him and take his soul. Cody will give his answer this coming Saturday at Elimination Chamber. Many figure, myself included, that it won't be Cody signing up to be The Rock's corporate champion, but perhaps someone like John Cena could. And CM Punk has added to his Instagram stories a comic panel of Doctor Doom and Spider-Man, with Doom saying that old foes must become new friends. While the story is quite exciting, the segment has divided opinions online, but it really lent more towards the negative. Many complained that The Rock felt rambly and incoherent in his promo, but a more broader point that he once again feels like he's come into WWE late in the day and seemingly changed up WrestleMania plans. I was joined by SP3 from True Heel Heat and Mex from Rest Tings and Gorilla Position to talk about all of this on Saturday, which you can check out by clicking the podcast in the video description. The Rock's appearance on SmackDown, much like his cameo at the end of last year's Bad Blood, reportedly came together about a week before the show, with Fightful Select reporting creative was told just a few days ahead of SmackDown, with it being a shock to many in the company. Several segments on the show were changed. A video of Nick Aldis announcing the lineup of matches was deleted by WWE as Cody Rhodes was now removed from the 6-man main event, and they also cancelled Liv Morgan versus Naomi, though that latter match did end up happening, but also didn't actually quite happen as it never got started. Fightful Select write there were some time adjustments, including in Naomi versus Liv Morgan. They added those that we've spoken to internally say that all of this came together very late, and even they haven't been told the next direction. Dave Meltzer writes the writers were confused and thrown for a loop, but it may not be as bad as some might have thought. As he writes, this was not as last minute as some are trying to say it was, but it did happen rather quickly. He suggests, and this is suggesting not reporting, his schedule may have changed about his availability moving towards or during WrestleMania. Meltzer was the first to report The Rock would likely not be a part of WrestleMania 41 due to his movie commitment, which has since been corroborated by several other outlets. Ibu of Self-Made PW even noted that WrestleMania was at the mercy of Dwayne, with some reports suggesting there were two plans in place for Mania 41, one with The Rock and one without. But what did you make of The Rock's segment on SmackDown? Let me know in the comments down below and fantasy book your corporate champion. And lastly for today, there was some fan speculation online about the new WWE trademark, Kalyx. Some speculated this could be the new name for NXT's Sol Ruca, as her real name is Kalyx. However, according to Fightful Select, it is not for her. It's actually for a new masked character that has been part of the Evolve tapings. And who is it that is under the mask? WWE referee Jessica Carr. This isn't Carr's first time as a wrestler, as she was one before she became a ref for WWE, wrestling under the names Kennedy Brink and Jessie K, and as a one-shot on NXT as Kennedy Lewis. Now go and get a cup of tea and sit back and enjoy a 3.5-hour review of WrestleMania 28 with myself and Ollie Davis. And when you're done with that, sign up for patreon.com/WrestleTalk to get another massive review of Raw 1000.